Welcome, friends, to an extra festive episode of A VGM Journey. And I'm your host, The Messenger. And this is our Secret Santa Special 2. And if you're not really sure what the Secret Santa Special is all about, it's a new holiday tradition for a VGM Journey where I have select participants pick out a special track for another listener. And it's more of a gigantic gift exchange, but with music. And that this first track that we played into the show, that was a gift from myself to Carly, my fiance, and that was interior designing from the game Animal Crossing New Horizon Happy Home Paradise. And it was possibly composed by Yasuaki Iwata, Yumi Takahashi, Shinobu Nago, Sayako Doi, and Masato Osashi. We've got a pretty big bag of tracks for this show, and quite a bit of recognizable names in the VGM podcasting community. I got some podcasters, I got some listeners. And I think we're going to kick things off with a track that is coming from John Wedgeworth, the host of Nerd Noise Radio. And this track was a gift for Scott McElhone. This is Title Screen from the game PGA Tour 96. And it was composed by Mark Farley, Rob Hubbard, Tony Berkeley, and David Whittaker. That track that you just heard, that was Title Screen from the game PGA Tour 96. It was composed by Mark Farley, Rob Hubbard, Tony Berkeley, and David Whittaker, and that was a gift from John Wedgeworth to Scott McElhone. I don't know what it is about golf music in video games, but this is a nice little jam. I feel like this track was mainly composed by Rob Hubbard, mainly because it has his signature Genesis twangy style that I've come to associate him with. And this is an EA Sports game, and he was kind of the EA Sports guy. I'm not entirely sure if he did any of the NBA games, but I know he definitely worked on Madden and NHL. John didn't really have too much to say about this track. He said that he was mainly looking for the PS1 version of the track, but couldn't find it on YouTube, so he decided to go with the Genesis version, which I'm not sure how the PS1 version is, but this Genesis one is a pretty great track, so I'm actually glad he picked this for Scott, and I'm thinking Scott's gonna like this, so thank you, John, for that awesome track for Scott. This next track, this is coming from Erik Woods, who is the host of Cinematic Sound Radio, and he picked this track for Hammock, the host of KVGM The Last Wave. This is Torch Song from the game LA Noire, and it was composed by Andrew Hale and Simon Hale.
I need something to soothe this pain, to cool the lava you pump through my veins, 'cause I'm burning up for you. And I need something to quench this fire before it becomes a funeral pyre. Yeah, I'm burning with yearning so much for you. You struck the sparks, you felt the flames in me, and now my heart's a blazing ruin. You say that you were only fooling. Don't walk away, don't do me wrong, don't leave me singing this torched song when I'm burning up for you. Your love's a drug I have to drop. It hurts me so much, but I just can't stop. I can't stop burning. I'm yearning so much for you. You struck the sparks, you fire the flames in me. And now my heart's a blazing ruin. You say that you were only fooling. Don't walk away. Don't do me wrong. Don't leave me this way, singing this tortured song. Don't leave me burning. I'm burning out for you.
That track that you just heard, that was Torch Song from the game LA Noire. It was composed by Andrew Hale and Simon Hale, and it was requested by Eric Woods for Hammock. I don't think I've ever talked about LA Noire on the show before, and I have to say that track was pretty amazing, and that game is also pretty amazing as well. And the premise of the game is that you play as this detective in the I can't remember if it's the late 40s or the early 50s. And you solve all kinds of different crimes, and you work in several different departments for the police. So you get promoted as you go through the game. And that you solve crimes like arson and even work in homicide. I think those murder mysteries I think that's the most exciting part of the game. And I think the rest of the soundtrack is actually pretty good too. But this game's claim to fame was the facial technology that the game engine had. So they did a lot of motion capture with the actors, and that a big part of the game was the interrogation scenes where you ask questions and the person that you're interrogating, they will give some kind of answer. And based off of their facial expression, you have to determine if they're telling the truth, if you doubt what they're saying, like you think they're lying, but you can't exactly prove it, or you think that they are straight up lying and that you have the corresponding evidence that can disprove their statement. And that it's mainly an action game, but when you're in the crime scenes, I do get kind of a point and click adventure vibe because you're looking for various items that are evidence and you jot it down in your notebook. And I don't want to delve too much into the story, so I know it's kind of an old game, but it is one that I think a lot of people should check out and experience that on their own. So I want to say once again, Eric, thank you for that track for Hammock. We've been kind of playing a lot of smooth tracks so far in the show, so let's kind of turn things up a little, have a little bit of energy. And this next track, it's coming from Ed Wilson, the host of the VG Embassy, and he picked this track out for The Last Rican, the host of a VGM Fight Club. This is Edit Mode from the game Fire Pro Wrestling Returns, and it was composed by Takafumi Wada, Yōko Wada, Mituhiro Uehara, and Satoshi Izumi. That track that you just listened to, that was Edit Mode from the game Fire Pro Wrestling Returns. It was composed by Takafumi Wada, Yōko Wada, Mituhiro Uehara, and Satoshi Izumi. And this was requested by Ed Wilson for The Last Rican, aka Daryl Bowers. Ed had this to say: I know wrestling is a huge part of Daryl's life, and I've enjoyed the Fire Pro series since its early days on the PC Engine and Super Famicom. The music that plays while you make your characters in the PS2 iteration is a straight up jazzy jamalama. I gotta tell you this, Mr. Wilson, I 100% agree. And I think this track is one of those tracks that fall into the short but sweet kind of category. It doesn't try to do too much, but what it does is very good. I get a slight Persona vibe from the music a little bit. I don't know, maybe I'm kind of hearing nothing, but I don't really know too much about Fire Pro Wrestling, other than it is a really good wrestling series that I hear. And I was a little surprised on how jazzy it is. Like, it does have the guitars, but I was expecting a lot more rock out of it. But what we get, it is really good, and it's pretty fun. So, once again, Ed, thank you for that track for The Last Rican. We're going to move on to a track that is coming from Hammock, the host of KVGM The Last Wave. He picked this track out for Chris Murray, and this is the ending theme from Psy-O-Blade Moving Adventure, and it was composed by Kazunori Hasegawa and Shigeru Tomita. That track that we just listened to, that was the ending theme from Psy-O-Blade Moving Adventure, and it was composed by Kazunori Hasegawa and Shigeru Tomita, and this was requested by Hammock for Chris Murray. Hammock sent me an audio testimony, so let's give that a quick listen.
Surprise, Chris Murray, it's me, Hammock, Santa Hammock. Merry Christmas. Now I know that I like to jam out, and you know that I know that you like to rock out. And that's the great thing about a jam, is that it can both rock and roll, like a wave, like the last wave, oh. So I went with a track from the Sega Mega Drive that takes you on a journey of sweet Yamaha FM sound. It's the ending to Moving Adventures Psy-O-Blade, composed by Kazunori Hasegawa and Shigeru Tomita. Hands down, this track features the best drum solo on the Sega Genesis. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a happy holidays. Yours truly, Hammock.
Thank you, Hammock, for that audio testimonial. I agree with Hammock that I think Chris Murray will really like this track. It's a little different than I was expecting, but I still think it's pretty great. Our next track is coming from Bedroth, the host of Very Good Music, a VGM podcast, and he picked this track out for John Wedgeworth, the host of Nerd Noise Radio. This is coming from the game The Legend of Xanadu. The track is The Ice Tower, and it was composed by Atsushi Shirakawa. That pretty awesome track that you just listened to, that was The Ice Tower from the game The Legend of Xanadu. It was composed by Atsushi Shirakawa, and this was requested by Bedroth for John Wedgeworth. Just like Hammock, Bedroth sent me an audio testimonial, and here it is.
Well. Merry Christmas, everyone. Alex, thank you so much for putting this together, and I was excited when you told me that I get to pick a track for John Wedgeworth as my Secret Santa assignment, and especially when you told me that he's more into retro stuff, because that's one of my real soft spots. And so you did mention that he has this particular soft spot for the TurboGrafx 16, and so John, I went on a little bit of a deep dive, and I landed on a PC Engine CD track. This is actually from a Falcom game with a title with kind of a long and storied history. I definitely want to leave room for everybody else, so I won't go too far in here, but for anyone who doesn't know, the Dragon Slayer series, produced by Falcom starting way back on the home PC models back in the 80s, eventually launched a few other series, one of which is The Legend of Xanadu, and more popularly in the West, its sequel, Fuzanadu or Faxanadu, depending on how you pronounce it. Well, my track comes from The Legend of Xanadu, which is Dragon Slayer 8, and was known in Japan as Kaze no Densetsu Xanadu. This track is called The Ice Cave, or Frozen Cavern, and Falcom music is notoriously hard to track down. I did find a handy-dandy spreadsheet, though, which seems to show that it was confirmed on Atsushi Shirakawa's Twitter that he was the one who actually composed this particular track. The game itself was composed by Falcom sound team JDK. But that's enough of my long-winded ramble coming in. John, I hope you like your song. Merry Christmas to you, and once again to everybody else. Alex, thanks again, and we'll see you all on the VGM Podwaves.
Thank you, Bedroth. And you pretty much took the words out of my mouth, and even then some, because to be honest, I really have nothing to add. And that I think it's a pretty great track. I feel as though Mr. Wedgeworth is gonna love it. So thank you, Bedroth. This next track, this is coming from Purnell, one of the hosts of Rhythm and Pixels, and he picked this track for Ryan Steele. This is coming from the game Steel Assault. This is Boss 2, also known as the theme of Balthasar Klein, and this was composed by Questa, aka Joseph Bailey. That rocking track that you just heard, that was Boss 2, also known as the theme of Balthasar Klein from the game Steel Assault. It was composed by Joseph Bailey, aka Questa, and this was requested by Purnell for Ryan Steele. That was an absolute rockin' banger of a track. I think a lot of the tracks that we've been playing on the show so far, they've been pretty chill stuff. I mean, there were some jazzy stuff, but this was on a whole different level. And I believe that a track like this is definitely up Ryan Steele's alley. And I think a track like this would have actually fit pretty well in my episode with Ryan, which that was way back in level 40 when I had Ryan on the show. I can't really talk too much about Steel Assault, and it is a fairly new game. I mean, it did come out a few months ago. But if this song is any kind of indication, then the rest of the soundtrack, it's got to be pretty amazing. I mean, just listen to it. So I want to say thank you, Purnell, for that rocking track. And I'm telling you, I think Ryan's going to love it. And speaking of Ryan Steele, this next track is coming from Ryan Steele. And this track is for Ed Wilson, the host of the VG Embassy. This track is called Live to Die, the beta mix from the game Two Strikes, and it was composed by Benny Maru. track that you just heard, that was Live to Die, the beta mix from the game Two Strikes. It was composed by Benny Maru, and it was requested by Ryan Steele for Ed Wilson. So thank you, Ryan. When I was picking the Secret Santa assignments for everyone, which I'll be honest, it was pretty much random, I had a feeling that whoever was going to get Ed, it was either going to be the toughest decision to make or maybe the easiest. I felt like it could go either way. And Ryan was up for the challenge. And to be honest, I think he pulled it off. So I think this track is pretty amazing. And I've never heard of Two Strikes. So I was watching some YouTube gameplay for it, and it's a one-on-one fighting game where you play as samurai. And the big shtick with the game is that it's a lot of sword clashing, and that one strike will kill. So there's a lot of intensity in the fights, because one mess up could cost you your life. And it has this really amazing hand-drawn style. Like, I think it looks beautiful. And I believe this game hasn't officially been released. I think there's been a beta that's been going around. I'd have to look more into it, but I think this is definitely something that I want to be on a lookout for. And I definitely want to check it out. And this track, it has this style to it that makes it feel both classic and modern at the same time. And that just like the art style itself, I think there is just this beauty that comes with it. I can't quite pick out why I think that way. That's how I'm feeling listening to it. So I want to say, Ryan, thank you. For our next track, this is coming from Scott McElhone for Utopia Nemo. And I'm going to say this. Scott was the only person that actually went for a Christmas type of track, which he didn't necessarily have to do that, but he did have Utopia Nemo in mind. And I'm sure that Nemo's going to love this. And this is coming from Days Before Christmas. The track is Out in the Snow, and this was composed by Kim M. Jensen and Geir Jelta. The track that you just heard, that was Out in the Snow from the game Days Before Christmas. It was composed by Kim M. Jensen and Gear Jelta, and this was requested by Scott McElhone for Utopia Nemo. So thank you, Scott. I've been really loving the tracks on the show so far, but I am pretty happy that Scott went with a Christmas-themed game for his track that he picked out for Utopia Nemo. And I know that Utopia Nemo, he's a pretty big FM kind of guy, so this was definitely up his alley. And the premise to the game, it's nothing super crazy. Pretty much, you play as Santa Claus and you're trying to save Christmas, and a plot that is not really the most craziest thing in the world. And while listening to this song, I was trying to think of some other Christmas-themed video games, and to be honest, I really can't think of anything else. I mean, there has been some games that take place during Christmas, like Dead Rising 4 or Batman Arkham Origins. And does Christmas Nights even count? Because isn't that just a Christmas skin for Nights in the Dreams? I'm sure there's probably some random computer games that are Christmas themed and it's about Christmas, or you play as Santa Claus or Frosty or Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And I don't even think this game came out in North America. I think this was a Mega Drive exclusive. And just doing quick research, I just found out that there was a SNES version of the game, which I'm not sure the music is different in any way other than FM synths, you got samples. So I want to say once again, thank you, Scott, for that track. We're going to move on from Christmas track to a track from a game that is based off of an anime. And this was the Last Rican's pick for Kung Fu Carlito. This track is Pyramid from the game Hokuto no Ken, or Fist of the North Star. And I couldn't find any composer information, so I'm just saying Mr. or Mrs. Unknown. That track that you just heard, that was Pyramid from the game Hokuto no Ken, also known as Fist of the North Star. It was composed by an unknown composer. I mean, I really tried my best to find them. And this was requested by the Last Rican for Kung Fu Carlito. So thank you, Last Rican. The Last Rican had this to say: "The man with 7 stars, Carlito, like me, is a huge fan of anime, and I can't think of a better track than from one of his favorite fighting games, Fist of the North Star." Well, Mr. Rican, I will say this, as somebody who's not a anime guy or super huge into fighting games, I think you did a pretty fantastic job of picking out this track for Kung Fu Carlito. And I think this was pretty freaking awesome. I like the military sounding march drums that it starts off with, and then it starts building and building and building, and then it gets to just a really amazing place, and then you're just right at it. And I think from my limited understanding of Fist of the North Star is that it is a pretty huge series, or at least huge in popularity, and that it started off as a manga, then led to an anime, and then eventually down the road led into a fighting video game in the mid-2000s. And what was really cool about this game is that it was developed by Arc System Works, who they're pretty well known for their 2D fighting games like Guilty Gear or Blaze Blue, where they have really nice hand-drawn fighters. And now that I think about it, this track was definitely the perfect track for Carlito. So once again, Last Rican, thank you. This next track is coming from Chris Murray. He picked out this track for Purnell, one of the hosts of Rhythm and Pixels, and he picked the track Lydian Heroics from the game Dizzy Knight, and it was composed by Norin Rad. That track that you just heard, that was Lydian Heroics from the game Dizzy Knight. And it was composed by Noire and requested by Chris Murray for Purnell. So thank you, Chris, for that track. Where do I even begin with this track? I guess for starters, it just hits you right away. And I don't know about you guys, but I get a 16-bit Capcom rocking vibe from it. Like, this could have been something on Mega Man X. And I looked into Dizzy Knight, and I didn't realize that it was a mobile game where you use the gyro controls to roll this spinning knight around to attack monsters. I get kind of an action RPG vibe from it. And Noire has worked on some really good stuff. I know that a favorite soundtrack of his that I really like is Shakedown Hawaii, which that had a really cool FM Sega Genesis sounding soundtrack. And this track, you could convince me that this wasn't from a mobile game and that this was some obscure track from some game on the SNES. And it's these modern tracks that have a retro sound to it, especially the 16-bit sound and stuff. I think it's some really exciting stuff, and I wish that more people were listening to this kind of music. And I'm pretty sure Purnell is jamming out to this track right now. So thank you, Chris, for that track. We're going to move on to Kung Fu Carlito's track for Bedroth, and that this was a really cool cover of the main theme from Quartet, and that this original track was composed by Katsuhiro Hayashi, and I believe this arrangement was done by Blind Spot, or at least the name of this album that this popped up on was Blind Spot 2. I personally couldn't really find too much information for this, but this is a jam. That track that you just heard, that was the main theme from Quartet. It was originally composed by Katsuhiro Hayashi, and this arrangement was done by Blind Spot. Also, this was a request by Kung Fu Carlito for Bedroth, so thank you, Kung Fu Carlito. This was the only cover slash remix track that was picked for the Secret Santa special this year. So I know that we had a few of those last year, and I'm actually really glad that Carlito went in this route, because I think it would have been a little disappointing if we didn't get a track like this. I feel like this is a track that the original was good, but this arrangement is even better. I get a very nostalgic vibe from it, which makes sense. And that this 5-minute epic just kind of takes you on a bit of a journey, a VGM journey. Wink. And I don't think Bedroth is the biggest Sega guy, but I'm pretty sure that he's definitely going to get a nostalgic hit from this track, and that it will take him back to a time when he was much younger and into a much simpler time as well. I mean, I will admit, this was even before my time, and I feel like this can take me back to the past as well. So thank you, Kung Fu Carlito, for that track. We're getting towards the end of the show, and we have one more track from a listener to another listener, and that this track is coming from Utopia Nemo, and this is for Erik Woods, the host of Cinematic Sound Radio. And Nemo wanted to play this track from Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. The track is Guardian Ape, and it was composed by Yuka Kitamura. That track that you just heard, that was Guardian Ape from the game Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. It was composed by Yuka Kitamura, and this was requested by Utopia Nemo for Erik Woods. So thank you, Utopia Nemo, for that track. Nemo had this to say: Erik, I hope you enjoy this track. I am a fan of great film scores, and this soundtrack is incredibly cinematic. The track in question comes from one of the most intense boss fights I've ever encountered, helped to a great degree by the incredible music. Enjoy, and happy holidays. Intense is right. My god. I definitely feel like I'm going to get my butt kicked by whatever this boss is. So, I mean, I'll be honest with you. Sekiro is one of those games that I don't think I'm even going to touch, even with a 10-foot pole, because it is a From Software game that will kick your butt like 100 dozen times. I will say, all those soundtracks are really good, and Sekiro is no exception. As much as we love these retro tracks from the NES and Sega Genesis, and even the early polygonal era like the PlayStation 1 and Nintendo 64, and that the direction of these AAA games where they go for more of a movie-like score, I know it's been pretty diversive for a lot of VGM lovers, but tracks like this I think is pretty amazing. And that stuff like this can coexist with the chiptune sounds that we have all grown accustomed to and we've had in our lives for many, many years. And I would love to play more tracks like this on the show. It's not exactly my most favorite kind of VGM, but I sometimes feel like it's a bit underrated and that too many gamers kind of just don't want to listen to this kind of stuff for whatever reason. So I'm actually really glad that Nemo picked a track like this for the show. So thank you, Utopia Nemo. And I think that's going to just about do it for this Secret Santa special. I normally go into this whole end of the show business, but I want to quickly say thank you to everyone that participated in the Secret Santa special this year. I think we've had a really good turnout, and you guys have all picked some pretty amazing tracks. And I also want to say thank you to the other listeners that have been continually supporting the show by just being a listener, and sometimes they pop up once in a while and they have nice things to say, or they have a track that they want to play on the show. And I really appreciate everything from all of you guys. And even bearing with me with some of the hiatuses and the breaks. And I know that I haven't consistently had a weekly show. So I guess just the short version, I just want to say thank you. If you like what you've been listening to, have your friends check out the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, whatever podcatching service that you can think of. I'm more than likely going to be on there. You can email the show at vgmjourney@yahoo.com, and you could also check us out on Twitter at vgmjourney. We're going to play things out with one more track, and this is coming from Carly, who's given me this track as a gift. And this isn't really shocking, but this is coming from The Messenger. This is Harness the Wind, and it was composed by Rainbow Dragon Eyes. Happy holidays, everyone.